Let's get this show on the road, folks. Time to enjoy Atikaki 2023. We'll visit to Manitoba Park. As we left the air base, the pilot had warned us that he'd never landed on this lake before. He knew there was a lot of rocks up there. There could be some problems, and maybe he couldn't even put us on the lake of our choice, and we'd have to land someplace else and start our vacation in a place that had already been a few years ago. Fortunately, as he flew over, he spotted a nice sand beach down below, and he checked it out for rocks and flew around a couple times, and he dropped us in, and smiles on his face. He said he'd be happy to come back here again. As I asked him, he got us here. Now, do you ever want to come back? Because he'd been a little nervous about getting in there, but once he knew it could happen, he was a happy pilot, and we were some happy campers because we were on our lake of our choice. And now we're on our lake of our choice, but we've never been there before. We have no idea where we're going to camp. You see the storm clouds in the distance. We had some rain and clouds moving in, and we got some rain while we guys packed up, went to look for a site, and I went to work getting my pack boat put together. As I got my pack boat assembled, the rest of the guys went over and found a nice campsite only about a quarter of a mile away, and I think that Mike was out casting and catching a few walleye before he even put his tent up. The camp did get put together, and this became a evening routine of having a big platters of freshly caught walleye and maybe some hash browns to go along. And oh yes, we did eat fish. We had a lot of fish to eat, but it never went to waste because if there was any left at all, it got put into a baggie and wrapped around a rag and kind of put in a cooler of just the air coming by to cool that rag off, and then we'd have fish tacos in the morning or at lunch. That may have been the evening routine, but every morning started with a thermos full of coffee and come out and sit on a nice rock and enjoy the lake, at least until that first thermos was all gone. We had two 18-foot Winona Kevlar canoes, and then my pack boat that I'd put together out of a roll. These were available for the guys to take out whenever they wanted to go fishing or out paddling around. One day, Mike, Kevin, and Dick wanted to go fishing on a nearby lake, so to avoid portaging more than one canoe across the portage, they decided to all go over together. That was their choice. Isn't there a poem about 3 men in a tub? It was amazing how fast those first 2 weeks flew by. The plane came back in again, and on board were my sister Paula, Nan and Oleg, who were here on the trip last year, and John. And as the plane left, it took Mike, Kevin, and Terry out with it. So we had new arrivals, had a lot of gear to change out, get all ready, but more fun to come. So our new cast of characters included my sister Paula, who was up with me last year on the trip. And this is John. He just arrived. This is Dick. He has been with me for the first 2 weeks. And over to the right beyond sight is Nan and Oleg and their dog Molly. What's this? Where are we? Out in the wilderness?
Unknown state.
No way. Oh, what's a meal without a good salad, right? I mentioned it last year. My sister Paula came and joined me, But we never had any fish while she was here. So I said, okay, this year I'll fish and I'll teach you how to fish. So we've been going through the instructions here, and she wasn't having a lot of luck, but she kept at it and kept trying, and there were a lot of fish around.
Is it a walleye?
Yeah, big one.
Thumbs up.
Well, what do you think, Paula?
Well, finally got a fish.
A nice one. Nice walleye.
What's for dinner? Well, that was a lot of fun.
After a few more days at that site that we'd been on with the whole crew for the last couple of weeks, we moved across the lake, and Paul and I camped at the other end and come out with some really nice shaded spots for our tents that allowed us to have an afternoon nap in the shade. And that was really nice because when the sun was shining down bright on our other site, you couldn't enjoy your tent. But some other amenities around our site is we had this long bluff rock that sat out, and it was a nice place to take a chair out there. And Paula took advantage, went out, just got her book, and she'd read for a while. And then one morning we were out looking for blueberries, and we had a lot of this kind of country around. So we took a long walk back through the trees, found a lot of caribou sign and such. No caribou, but after a few nights at that site, Paul and I moved across the portage, and we joined back up with Dick and John, and there was Dick had come down to join me at my big erratic rock, and we had a nice little campsite set up there. Kind of had to carve a few things out to make it nice, but it worked out pretty good. I had a nice morning rock to go out and really enjoy my coffee. Kind of a morning ritual, get up, put the pot on to boil, put some coffee in my thermos, and pour it in. Then go out, sit by myself, and enjoy. Paula knew I liked my quiet time out there, so she would stay back here, and she left me alone as I enjoyed my quiet times.
Okay, stop.
Paula kept trying her hand at the fishing, and we kept going with that, although she wasn't having a lot of luck, but she managed to get a few on and maybe lost them. But we'll get her set up next year with a more proper reel. I think she'll be doing a lot better, but we did catch enough fish that as we even moved down to another camp yet on another lake, one thing I hadn't had the whole trip yet, we were having these really good, a lot of blueberries, so we had some really good blueberry pancake meals. I still hadn't had my pancakes and walleye. So finally one morning, or evening before actually, I went out and I caught a few fish and had them on a stringer, and the next morning I went down and got the fillets, and we had a good breakfast of pancakes and walleye. We were having a few little rains now and then, but it was mostly just passing clouds. We get a shower. It's nice to dampen the ground down. We had no issue about forest fires, as was rampaging over so much of Canada this year. But one day, the forecast, it was supposed to be a rainy afternoon, so I lowered the tarp down a little lower. I brought the canoe up to block the wind and made us a little shelter where we could be in there snug and still have a nice view of the lake. And I think we put on a thermos of some nice good tasting tea that she had along. And to do that, I like to bring in a few rocks for my little kitchen. That way we have some, somewhat clean places to set a few things without having them down in the moss and everything. But this is my kitchen set up with a little Peak One type stoves, and I haul some of my stuff into Lexan bottles and then refill them out of a seal bag when they run low. I had packed in this book for my sister Paula to read. I thought she would really enjoy it, and she did. She would take her chair out and get on a nice rock, maybe in the shade of the sun, depending on her mood, and spend a lot of time just doing some enjoyable reading. And maybe while we were up worked on a trail one day or something, and she just sat up on a nice bluff and enjoyed her time there reading and taking pictures. I had been at this campsite on our last lake in 2018, and my cabin partner Jim, he had set up his little headquarters down here in this little point, and it was pretty nice. And so that's where Paul and I set up this time, and real nice rock porch out there, and yet our tents could be back out of the wind and out of the shade. And Paula's was close enough, far enough away she couldn't hear me snore, but yet loud enough that she had to call in the night because a bear was coming or something. I was readily available, so that worked out well for us. We had a good time at that campsite. The blueberries were just luscious. There was just some back in these trees, even not too far from our tents. We could go back and we could pick up cups and cups of blueberries, and we did some hiking up on some trails. And finally, though, time was running out. It was time to start packing things away, and I had the pack canoe rolled up in its bag. And then the last morning, the plane was coming in about 1 o'clock to pick us up, so we had to get everything piled up and taken down, packed into bags, because for the float plane trips, we try to keep everything as condensed as possible so the pilots aren't throwing these little this and that in. If you want to make an enemy out of a float plane pilot, just have all your stuff in disarray, and you're throwing water bottles and packs and day packs and everything else. So they appreciate a tidy ship. It makes their job so much easier. But as you look at what I have piled on top of this canoe, you might kind of wonder, well, what kind of a plan was that? But it is all in containers, and so we were ready to push off and go down to where the plane was going to pick us up. So now the pilot's going to pack the airplane, and he likes to put some heavy stuff toward the front. So he had us hand up some of our heavier packs first. Even after having been out for a month, it's surprising that all those packs, they still weigh quite a bit. Then it was time to get the canoes tied onto the floats and head for home.